The hospital sat on the edge of an old European city, tucked behind fog-choked alleys and barbed wire gates. St. Argento Psychiatric Facility had once been a place of progressive healing in the 1940s. Now, it was a forgotten relic. Cracked stone, ivy-clad walls, and corridors that breathed cold into the bones. Alara Voss was a young resident doctor from Berlin. She had volunteered for a 6-month psychiatric rotation, expecting a sleepy post and an opportunity to work on her thesis. Instead, she got Ward 9. Most of the patients are stable, Clara, the head nurse, told her on her first day. But avoid room 905. It's unoccupied. Always has been. Alara raised an eyebrow. Then why is it still on the roster? Clara paused. Some doors stay open for a reason. By the 4th night, Alara started hearing whispers. They came around 3 a.m. from vents under the doors, sometimes inside her own ears. Words half-formed, forgotten. Wake up, 905. She dismissed it at first. Stress, fatigue. But things escalated. A patient named Irina scratched the number 905 into her skin using a hairpin. When restrained, she screamed. She's still in there. She never left. When asked who, Irina wept blood and whispered, Ilara, Ilara, you. That night, Ilara dreamed of herself lying in a hospital bed, mouth sewn shut, in room 900. Ilara couldn't sleep. She found herself pacing the halls, staring at room 905. Everyone told her it didn't exist, but she had touched the door. She'd heard breathing inside. One night, a man was admitted with no pulse, but he blinked and smiled at her. Hello, Ilara, he said. You were my doctor once, in 905. In the records archive, she found a file. Patient, Dr. Ilara Voss. Dated 1991. That's not possible, she whispered. I was born in 1988, but the photo was her. An older version, in an outdated uniform. Below it, they never left. She never left. Inside room 905, a version of herself waited. You always come back, the woman said. But you never remember. Flashes struck Ilara's memory. She had been a patient, after a fire, after her parents died. She was institutionalized, treated, forgotten. Ilara ran, but every door led back to Ward 9. In the lobby, abandoned for decades, she found her death certificate. Ilara Voss died March 3rd, 1992. This place isn't haunted by ghosts, the figures whispered. It's haunted by memory. She turned and stepped into room 905, where time didn't exist. A new doctor arrives at St. Argento, young, hopeful. You'll be in Ward 9, says Nurse Clara, older now. The doctor frowns. I didn't see that ward on the map. Some things aren't on maps, Clara replies. As the new doctor walks down the hallway, she hears a whisper through the walls. Don't forget me. The door to room 905 creaks open. The end. Next story, the forgotten ward. At the edge of a mist-cloaked village in Eastern Europe, the Aldermore Asylum stood alone. The stone walls were overgrown with ivy, and the windows were either boarded up or shattered, revealing only darkness within. Once, it had been a haven for those suffering from mental illness. Now, it was a forgotten place, abandoned for decades. People in the village spoke little of it, but everyone knew. No one who had entered ever left. The new head nurse, Isabel Varga, was assigned to the asylum after an administrative mix-up. A woman of ambition, she wasn't afraid of superstition. She had heard the rumors, but dismissed them. Upon arrival, she found the building's interior even more eerie than she had anticipated. The walls were damp, the air stale with the scent of decay. A faint odor of antiseptic lingered, but beneath it was the scent of something older, something dead. Her first night on the job, Isabel was given the tour by the night orderlies. They spoke little, except for a cryptic warning: stay away from the ward, the forgotten ward. She was puzzled. What do you mean by that? She asked, but the orderlies were already gone, leaving her standing in the long, narrow corridor. The next day, when Isabel was assigned to monitor the patients, she was shown to the various wards, each more decrepit than the last. The patients were strange, but none as unsettling as those in Ward 13, the one no one ever mentioned. The room had been locked for years, its door rusted and heavy. But when Isabel walked past, she felt something calling her. Something tugged at her, a whisper, faint and distant. She turned, and though no one had spoken, the air around the door seemed to throb with unspoken words. That night, curiosity overtook her. She found the key to Ward 13 in the head nurse's office, locked away behind glass. The old iron door creaked open, and a heavy silence filled the room. The walls inside were covered in old, faded photographs of patients' faces of the forgotten, their eyes staring blankly into the camera. But it was the shadows that caught Isabel's attention. There was something lurking in the corners, something alive, though it didn't belong. As she stepped further into the room, the temperature dropped. A voice echoed in her ear. "You shouldn't be here." Isabel spun around, but there was no one there. Panic set in, but her legs carried her forward. In the far corner of the room, there was a single bed. A figure lay still under the blankets, but it wasn't a patient. It was a man, his face obscured by a thick mane of black hair. His body was gaunt, unnaturally thin, as though drained of life. "Who are you?" Isabel asked, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but as she approached, his head slowly lifted. His face was pale, almost skeletal, with deep-set eyes that burned with an unnatural light. He smiled, though it was not a comforting expression. His teeth were jagged, broken, and yellowed. "You should not have come," he whispered hoarsely. "They never leave." Suddenly, the room filled with the sounds of muffled voices, the soft laughter of children, the screams of anguish. The walls seemed to pulse as though alive, the photographs on them shifting, changing old patients' faces fading into shadows. Isabel stumbled back, but the door slammed shut behind her. The man in the bed rose, his limbs unnaturally long and twisted, like something that shouldn't move. He reached for her, but as his fingers brushed her skin, she screamed. The room began to distort, the floor warping beneath her feet. The man's voice echoed in her ears as the world around her darkened. "You're just like the others. You'll never leave." When Isabel woke up, she was back in her own bed. But the world felt different. It was quieter. The walls were still the same, but they seemed to be closing in on her. As she tried to stand, her reflection in the cracked mirror startled her. The face staring back was not hers, but the same gaunt, pale figure she had seen in Ward 13. The door to her room creaked open, but no one was there. A soft, distant whisper floated through the air. "Welcome to the forgotten ward." Isabel's heart raced as she turned to the window, but it was dark outside. The once familiar village was gone. Only mist remained, surrounding the crumbling asylum, swallowing it whole. Next stories, The Silent Floor. The hospital sat at the outskirts of a quiet town, known by the locals as the Ashford Medical Institute. It was a sprawling building, designed with great care decades ago, though now it had become a place of murmurs and whispers. Long corridors, cracked tiles, and cold, sterile rooms that seemed to hum with a strange energy. Most of the patients who entered didn't leave, and those who did spoke of things that couldn't be explained. For Dr. Marianne Hayes, a young psychiatrist, it was supposed to be a fresh start. She had just moved from a well-established practice in the city, eager to escape the fast-paced life and work somewhere quiet. Ashford Medical had an open position for a resident psychiatrist, and Marianne had accepted, unaware of the place's grim history. Her first day at Ashford was like any other in a new hospital. The staff were kind enough, though distant, and the patients were quiet. But as the day wore on, she began to notice something strange. There was a flaw that no one spoke about. It wasn't on the hospital's map, and no one seemed willing to discuss it. Marianne's curiosity got the best of her. One evening, after everyone had gone home, she decided to find out more. She ventured through the hallways, following the trail of flickering lights and the strange humming sound that seemed to echo from above. The elevator, normally silent, shuddered as it moved, groaning and stopping at the floor that was never mentioned. The doors slid open with a soft thud, and for a moment, Marianne hesitated. The floor was cold, and the dim lighting cast long shadows across the empty hallway. The walls were lined with doors, all closed, with not a sound to be heard. The silence was oppressive, thick, like something was waiting in the dark. As she walked further down the corridor, the air grew colder, heavier, and her footsteps seemed too loud in the silence. She found herself standing in front of a door at the end of the hall. It was different from the others. Old, rusted hinges, and a thick layer of dust on the handle. Marianne reached out to open it, but before she could touch the knob, she heard something behind her, a soft whisper, too faint to make out, but unmistakable. A voice, "Leave." Marianne spun around, but the hallway was empty. Her heart raced, and for a moment, she thought of leaving, but her professional curiosity pushed her forward. She opened the door. Inside was a small, dimly lit room with a single bed. A single window revealed nothing but the grey sky outside. But what caught Marianne's attention were the patient records strewn across the floor, scattered as though someone had hurriedly left. She knelt down to pick one up. The name on the file was Strange Patient, 2178, date admitted, unknown. As she flipped through the file, a chill ran down her spine. The notes were cryptic, almost nonsensical. Patient displays signs of acute paranoia, believes the floor is watching them, refuses to leave the room. The last entry was the most disturbing. Patient has been in a catatonic state for 13 years. Subject has been deemed incurable. Suddenly, a low guttural noise came from the corner of the room. Marianne's breath caught in her throat. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto a figure huddled in the shadows. The figure was hunched, its face obscured, but she could feel its gaze cold, piercing. The figure spoke again, its voice raspy and slow, like it hadn't been used in years. "You shouldn't have come." Marianne froze. The air felt thicker now, and the room seemed to close in on her. She backed away slowly, but the figure's voice grew louder. "They'll never let you leave." Marianne reached for the door, but before she could turn the handle, the lights flickered. The floor beneath her feet groaned, as if the building itself were alive, shifting, aware of her presence. The door slammed shut with a force that rattled her bones. Trapped, the whispers from the shadows grew louder, surrounding her, filling the room. Her pulse quickened, her breath shallow, as the floor began to tremble. Something was happening. She could feel it in the very bones of the building. She turned, desperately searching for another way out. That's when she saw the patient file on the ground. The name she had read before, Patient 2178. But now the name had changed. Marianne Hayes. The walls of the room seemed to pulse with life. The whispering voices now screamed in unison. You are one of us now. Her hand touched the door handle again, but it was no use. No matter how hard she pulled, the door wouldn't open. The walls seemed to close in, her vision narrowing. There was no escape. As the lights flickered out, all she could hear was the soft, rhythmic sound of her own breathing, mingling with the distant whispers. The floor beneath her feet groaned once more, and the last thing Marianne saw was her own reflection staring back at her from the cracked window, a reflection that wasn't quite her own, a reflection of a woman who had been lost to the floor, to the darkness, and then there was nothing.